Elon Musk attempts to enter a church, but when he's unexpectedly denied, the community's reaction shocks everyone. Just when it seems like tensions are at their peak, a little girl steps forward and does something that leaves everyone speechless. What happens next is a powerful moment of unity and faith. Don't miss this incredible twist you won't see coming. The Sunday morning air was alive with the soft chiming of Mount Olive Baptist Church's bells, their peals resonating through the small southern town. The church was the heart of the community, a place where families gathered to worship, connect, and share their triumphs and struggles. Children laughed as they scurried up the steps, women in colorful Sunday dresses greeted each other warmly, and men, many donning their best suits, exchanged firm handshakes. This was a day like any other, or so they thought. At the far end of the gravel parking lot, a sleek black Tesla rolled to a silent stop. The car's presence, an unusual sight among the array of pickup trucks and modest sedans, immediately drew a few curious glances. The driver's door opened, and out stepped a man whose face was recognizable to almost everyone, though not someone they'd ever expect to see here. Elon Musk adjusted the collar of his simple blue button-down shirt and scanned the lively scene in front of him. The cheerful chatter, the smell of freshly baked pies wafting from the community kitchen, and the energy of the congregation were magnetic. For weeks, he'd been on a quiet personal journey, seeking moments of reflection and inspiration outside the noise of his high-stakes world. A random internet search had led him to this church, known for its vibrant gospel services and tightly knit community. It seemed like the perfect place to find the connection he was looking for. But as he approached the steps, the energy shifted. Harold, the head deacon, stood tall at the entrance, his eyes narrowing as they met Elon's. Harold, a man in his late 60s with a booming voice and a reputation for keeping order, took his role as the church's gatekeeper seriously. The sight of a stranger, particularly one as out of place as Elon, immediately set off his protective instincts. "Morning, sir," Harold said, his tone polite but firm. "Can I help you?" Elon stopped just a step below Harold, his hands in his pockets. "Good morning. I was passing through and heard the bells. Thought I'd join your service if that's all right." Harold's eyes scanned him, taking in the expensive car, the casual attire, and the unmistakable air of someone who didn't belong. He cleared his throat. "Well, this is a private service for our members and their families. We don't usually have visitors just dropping in." The words were measured, but unmistakable. Elon blinked, momentarily thrown. "I understand," he said slowly. "I didn't mean to intrude. I've heard wonderful things about your church and thought I'd see it for myself." Harold didn't budge, his arms crossing over his chest. A few congregants near the doorway exchanged looks, their curiosity growing. "This isn't a tourist stop," Harold replied, his voice softening only slightly. "It's a place for worship, for our community." "I respect that," Elon said, taking a step back. "Thank you for your time." As he turned to leave, the buzz of whispers began to ripple through the crowd. More people had noticed the exchange now, some recognizing Elon, and others simply intrigued by the sight of someone so clearly out of place. Inside the church, an 8-year-old girl named Maya sat by the window, her small frame pressed against the pane as she peered out. She had wide, curious eyes and an innate sense of justice that often left adults either charmed or exasperated. "Mama," she said, tugging at her mother's sleeve. "Why is that man leaving? Who is he?" Her mother, a kind but cautious woman named Denise, glanced out the window and frowned. "Don't worry about that, baby. He's not from around here." "But he wanted to come inside," Maya insisted, her young mind already churning. "Why didn't Mr. Harold let him?" Denise sighed, smoothing down Maya's dress. "Sometimes it's hard to trust people we don't know. Let's focus on the service." But Maya couldn't let it go. As the choir began their first hymn, her thoughts remained on the man outside. Why would someone be turned away from church? Wasn't this supposed to be a place for everyone? Her Sunday school lessons about kindness and acceptance replayed in her mind, conflicting with what she just witnessed. Meanwhile, Elon paused near his car, reluctant to leave. Something about the encounter lingered with him. He'd faced rejection before, but there was a particular sting in being turned away from a place that preached openness and love. "Excuse me." A small voice broke through his thoughts. He turned to see Maya standing at the top of the church steps, her hands on her hips. She had slipped away from her mother and now stood boldly where Harold had once blocked Elon's path. "Why are you leaving?" she asked, her voice carrying across the quiet parking lot. Harold, who had been about to re-enter the church, froze. "Maya, what are you doing?" he called, a mix of surprise and frustration in his tone. Maya ignored him, her gaze fixed on Elon. "You wanted to come to church, didn't you?" Elon nodded, caught off guard. "I did, but I don't want to cause any trouble." "Then don't leave," Maya said simply. "Church is for everybody, right?" "Maya, that's enough." Harold barked, his usual composure slipping. "No, it's not enough." Maya shot back, her small voice somehow filling the space with authority. "You always tell us in Sunday school that God doesn't turn people away, so why are you?" The crowd at the doorway gasped, and a murmur of agreement rippled through them. Harold looked around, his cheeks flushing. Elon crouched slightly to meet Maya's eye level, a soft smile spreading across his face. "You're very brave," he said. "Thank you, but I don't want to upset anyone." Maya frowned, grabbing his hand. "Come with me," she said, her grip surprisingly firm. Before anyone could stop her, Maya led Elon up the steps and through the church doors. A hushed silence fell over the congregation as the two walked down the aisle, their small yet powerful march cutting through the tension. The church fell silent as Maya led Elon through the grand double doors of Mount Olive Baptist Church. Heads turned and eyes widened in disbelief. It wasn't every day a child challenged authority so openly, let alone in front of the congregation. Elon, tall and slightly awkward in his movements, seemed out of place amid the vibrant, lively atmosphere. Maya didn't let go of his hand until they were both at the front of the church. She stopped near the pulpit, turning to face the crowd. Her tiny frame contrasted sharply with Elon's towering figure, yet her presence commanded the room. "This is a church, isn't it?" Maya asked loudly, her voice echoing off the stained glass windows. "We're supposed to welcome everyone here." The congregation murmured among themselves. Denise, her mother, had quickly made her way to the front, her expression a mix of worry and pride. Harold, still standing by the doors, shifted uncomfortably, his authority suddenly under question. "Maya, sweetheart, come back here," Denise urged, extending a hand toward her daughter. Maya, however, wasn't finished. "You told me that God loves everyone," she said, turning to Harold, her wide eyes accusing. "Even people we don't know." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. Elon, sensing the discomfort, raised his hand slightly as if to diffuse the tension. "I don't mean to cause a scene," he said, his tone gentle. "I can leave if—" "No, you're staying," Maya interrupted, planting her hands on her hips. "You came here to pray, didn't you?" Elon hesitated, then nodded. "I did." "Then you belong here," she declared, "just like everyone else." A ripple of agreement began to spread through the crowd. Some nodded. Others whispered to their neighbors, questioning why Harold had refused him entry in the first place. Harold stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Maya, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but you don't understand. This isn't about—" "Then explain it," Denise interjected, her voice firmer than before. "Why did you turn him away, Harold?" Harold froze. He hadn't expected the congregation to challenge him, especially not in front of their guest. "I was just trying to protect the sanctity of our space," he began, but his words faltered. "We don't know who he is." "Yes, we do," shouted a voice from the back. All heads turned to see Jameson, a young tech enthusiast who often worked the church's sound system. He waved his phone in the air, his face lit with excitement. "That's Elon Musk. He's like the richest man in the world." A collective gasp swept through the congregation. Whispers erupted as everyone processed this revelation. Some craned their necks for a better look, while others pulled out their phones to confirm Jameson's claim. "Elon Musk?" one woman whispered to her neighbor. "What's he doing here?" Elon, now the center of attention, chuckled softly, scratching the back of his neck. "I wasn't expecting to be recognized," he admitted. "I just wanted to experience the service and maybe learn a bit about this community." The murmurs grew louder, some voices questioning Harold's actions while others expressed their amazement. Harold, visibly flustered, tried to regain control. "It's not about his name or his money," he insisted, his voice rising. "We have to be careful who we let in." "But why?" Maya pressed, refusing to let him off the hook. "What's wrong with letting him pray with us?" Her question struck a chord with the crowd. One by one, people began to speak up. "She's right," said Mrs. Johnson, an elderly woman known for her no-nonsense attitude. "Who are we to judge someone who wants to join us in worship?" "Exactly," chimed in another. "Isn't that what we teach? To welcome everyone, no matter where they come from?" Harold's shoulders slumped as the weight of the congregation's disapproval bore down on him. He glanced at Elon, who met his gaze with calm patience. "I only came here to pray," Elon said softly. "But if my presence is disruptive, I'll leave." "No!" Maya cried again, stamping her foot. She turned to the crowd, her voice trembling with emotion. "If we turn him away, we're not just turning him away, we're turning away everything we say we believe in. Is that what we want?" The room fell silent once more. Harold looked at the faces around him, seeing not just judgment but disappointment. Finally, he sighed, raising his hands in surrender. "All right," he said. "You're right. I was wrong to turn you away." A wave of relief washed over the room. Elon smiled at Maya, his expression full of gratitude. "Thank you," he said. "I've met a lot of remarkable people in my life, but I think you might be one of the most courageous." Maya beamed, her earlier frustration giving way to pride. She returned to her mother's side, who pulled her into a tight hug. As Elon found a seat near the middle of the church, the choir began a new hymn, their voices rising in harmony. The atmosphere, once tense, transformed into one of unity and warmth. Harold, humbled by the experience, took his place among the congregation, vowing silently to reflect on his actions. For Elon, the service was everything he had hoped for and more. As the music swelled and the community embraced him, he realized that sometimes the most profound lessons come from the smallest voices. The choir's voices soared, filling every corner of Mount Olive Baptist Church with a melody so powerful it seemed to lift spirits higher with every note. Elon sat quietly, absorbing the experience. He couldn't remember the last time he had felt so at peace in a room full of strangers. It wasn't about business or ambition here. This was pure humanity. As the hymn concluded, Pastor Bennett approached the pulpit. His gaze lingered on Elon for a moment, then shifted to the congregation. "Brothers and sisters," he began, his deep voice resonating with a mix of authority and warmth, "today has been a reminder of what it truly means to live in faith." The congregation murmured their agreement, and Pastor Bennett smiled. "We're not perfect," he continued. "We make mistakes, we let fear and judgment cloud our hearts, but we also have the capacity to grow, to learn, to open our doors, not just to those we know, but to those we've yet to meet." He looked directly at Elon, who straightened slightly in his seat. "Mr. Musk," Pastor Bennett said, his tone genuine, "thank you for giving us the opportunity to reflect on our values. And Maya," he added, shifting his gaze to the little girl now sitting proudly beside her mother, "thank you for reminding us of the courage it takes to stand for what's right." The congregation erupted into applause. Maya grinned from ear to ear, leaning into her mother's embrace. Elon gave her a small nod of appreciation, marveling at her bravery. When the applause settled, Pastor Bennett continued, "As part of today's service, I'd like us to share our stories, to connect with one another. Mr. Musk, if you feel comfortable, we'd love to hear what brought you to our church today." The room fell silent, all eyes on Elon. For a moment, he hesitated, unsure how much to share. Then, encouraged by the warmth in the room, he rose to his feet. "First, thank you for welcoming me," he began, his voice steady but soft. "I wasn't raised in the church, and my life has taken me down paths that didn't often leave time for faith. But recently, I've been searching for something more, something beyond success and innovation." He paused, collecting his thoughts. "I came here today because I wanted to understand what it is that binds communities like this one together. How faith can bring people together in ways that technology never could." The congregation listened intently, some nodding in agreement. "And," he added, a small smile tugging at his lips, "because I believe that sometimes the answers we seek can only be found in places we least expect." Another round of applause broke out, this time accompanied by a few hearty amens. Elon sat back down, his cheeks faintly flushed, but his heart lighter than it had been in years. As the service progressed, members of the congregation stood to share their own stories. There was Mrs. Johnson, who spoke of her journey through grief after losing her husband, and Jameson, who shared how his faith had guided him through a tough decision about his career. Each story wove a thread of connection, creating a tapestry of shared struggles and triumphs. When Maya stood to speak, the room fell silent once more. "I don't have a big story like everyone else," she began, her small voice unwavering, "but I know that God wants us to love each other. That's why I couldn't let Mr. Musk leave." She looked up at Elon, her eyes shining. "Sometimes, grown-ups forget that love is the most important thing. But kids like me, we remember, and we won't let you forget." The congregation erupted into laughter and applause, their affection for Maya evident. Elon couldn't help but chuckle, moved by her sincerity. As the service neared its conclusion, Pastor Bennett invited everyone to join hands for a final hymn. Elon hesitated briefly but was soon pulled into the circle by Denise on one side and Harold on the other. The hymn began, and as the voices rose in unison, Elon felt something he hadn't expected: belonging. By the time the hymn ended, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. The congregation had not just welcomed Elon, they had embraced the message he unknowingly brought with him. That faith is about more than belief. It's about action, unity, and love. As they all bowed their heads for the closing prayer, Elon silently reflected on the day's events. He had come to learn about faith, but he realized he had gained so much more. When the prayer ended, the congregation began to mingle, exchanging kind words and warm smiles. Elon stayed for a while, talking with Maya, Denise, and even Harold, who admitted his initial judgment had been wrong. Before he left, Maya tugged at his sleeve. "Will you come back next Sunday?" she asked, her hopeful eyes shining. Elon crouched to her level, smiling warmly. "I think I will," he said. As Elon stepped out into the afternoon sun, he felt lighter, as if the burdens he had carried for years had lifted. The church bells chimed behind him, their melody echoing in his heart. The following Sunday arrived with an air of anticipation. At Mount Olive Baptist Church, the congregation gathered earlier than usual, murmuring about whether Elon Musk would actually return. Word of his visit had spread throughout the community, sparking curiosity and some skepticism. But for Maya, there was no doubt in her mind. "He'll be here," she insisted to her mother as they walked through the church doors. She held a basket of freshly baked cookies, a small token of gratitude she had prepared with Denise's help. The morning sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, casting vibrant patterns on the pews. The choir rehearsed softly, their harmonies creating a soothing prelude. As the clock struck 10, the church doors opened, and Elon walked in. This time, there was no hesitation, no side glances or whispered judgments. Instead, the congregation greeted him with warm smiles, firm handshakes, and even a few hugs. Maya sprinted toward him, her face lighting up like the morning sun. "You came," she exclaimed, holding out the basket of cookies. "I wouldn't miss it," Elon replied, crouching to accept her gift. He looked up at Denise, who nodded in approval. "These are for you," Maya added. "They're my favorite. Chocolate chip." "Mine too," Elon said with a grin. He stood, addressing the room. "Thank you for welcoming me back. It means more than I can say." Pastor Bennett approached, his presence commanding yet approachable. "Mr. Musk, we're honored to have you here again. Let's make today another day of learning, sharing, and growing." The service began, following the familiar rhythm of hymns, prayers, and scripture readings. But today there was a palpable energy in the room, a sense of unity that hadn't been as strong the week before. During the pastor's sermon, he spoke about redemption and the power of forgiveness. "It's not just about forgiving others," he said, his gaze sweeping across the congregation. "Sometimes it's about forgiving ourselves. Only then can we truly open our hearts to love." Elon listened intently, reflecting on his own journey. The past week had been transformative. He had revisited his upbringing, thought deeply about his relationships, and even begun exploring the concept of faith. But most importantly, he had come to appreciate the strength found in community, a strength that no amount of wealth or innovation could replicate. After the sermon, Pastor Bennett invited Elon to share a few words. The congregation watched as he approached the pulpit, a mix of curiosity and admiration in their eyes. "I'm not a man of many public speeches," Elon began, eliciting a few chuckles from the crowd. "But this past week I've realized something important. Success is often measured in dollars and achievements, but the real measure of success is the impact we have on others. He looked over at Maya, who beamed back at him. People like Maya remind us that courage and kindness can change the world in ways we might not expect, and this church, this community, has shown me the power of faith and connection. The congregation erupted into applause, their approval genuine and heartfelt. Pastor Bennett stepped forward, placing a hand on Elon's shoulder. "Thank you, Mr. Musk. Your words remind us all why we gather here each week." As the service came to a close, the choir began a spirited rendition of Amazing Grace. Elon, standing among the congregation, felt a lump rise in his throat as their voices filled the air. Maya tugged at his sleeve, motioning for him to join in. Hesitant at first, he eventually found himself singing, his voice blending with the chorus in a way that felt both surreal and liberating. By the time the hymn ended, the entire room was buzzing with a sense of renewal. Strangers had become friends, barriers had been broken, and hearts had been opened. Afterward, the congregation lingered, sharing stories and laughter. Elon spent time speaking with various members, learning about their lives and experiences. He even exchanged contact information with Pastor Bennett, promising to support the church's community outreach programs. Before he left, Maya approached him once more. "Are you coming back next week?" she asked, her eyes hopeful. Elon crouched to her level, resting a hand on her shoulder. "Count on it," he said, his voice steady and sincere. "But next time, I'm bringing something for you." "What?" Maya asked, her curiosity piqued. "You'll see," Elon replied with a wink. As he stepped out of the church into the midday sun, Elon felt a profound sense of peace. This place, these people, they had given him something he hadn't realized he was missing. And as he drove away, the sound of their voices singing together echoed in his mind, a reminder of the beauty that can be found in unity and understanding. The church bells rang in the distance, their melody carrying a message of hope and renewal. For Elon, it wasn't just another Sunday, it was the beginning of something extraordinary. Thanks so much for listening to the story. Let us know where you listened from, and be sure to subscribe for more stories. Have a blessed day.